So, Ricky, you played the game. How important is it to win a game in the preseason, in particular, since your head coach said it was important to try to win this preseason, and they haven't done so?
Well, I mean, Ken, you want to win every game you play. I mean, a lot of guys out there trying to make the team, they hungry, so they fighting, for their livelihood. So, you always want to win. You don't never want to lose. I mean, and so any game you go into, your mindset is you're trying to win the football game.
Brian, as a journalist covering a team, from your perspective,
yeah, thank you.
How important is it to have not won a game, considering you said you were putting an emphasis on trying to do so?
Well, I'm going to differ with my colleague here and say, he made an emphasis this preseason. He came out publicly and said, we would like to win every game. And they haven't, as you said, Kenny. And so anyway, so they have not met their preseason goal.
Right, and one thing, Ken, Pittsburgh has never been a team to be worried about preseason. You see, they lost all 8 in the preseason game, and they never. So just to beat the Saints like they did, I mean, that don't sell a whole lot.
Yeah, Steelers have had no success in the preseason. Again, different teams, different approach. And when you understand where you've been 7-9, 3 of the last 4 years, you can understand why there was an emphasis on trying to win a game or two. Now it's win a game. And it's really not a game because it's a scrimmage, and here it is. This is what's happened thus far. The loss at New England, the loss at Houston, the loss at home to Pittsburgh, and then the glorified scrimmage on Thursday against Baltimore, where they'll hold out everybody they possibly can and try not to get any more injuries, because ultimately, Brian, the preseason is about two things: identifying who your final, 5 to 10 players on the roster are, and staying healthy. That's what the preseason is all about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the thing, though, that you would like to see this particular preseason, Kenny, is that, they did make such an emphasis to try and play well, and they aren't playing well as your first unit going into the regular season. And that's a concern. It is a concern.
And, Ricky, frontline players only play a short period of time, so is that really the cop-out at this point to say, listen, they haven't played long enough to determine if this team is good enough?
Well, right now, Ken, you don't want to get nobody hurt who you're depending on for the season. But there's a lot of guys you're still looking at right now as borderline guys that they can beat some of their starters out. So you want everybody right now to play, because the Saints now don't have a good enough team so they can pick and choose who do what. You got Drew Brees, you got a couple of great guys who you're depending on, got good contracts and stuff. So you got those guys kind of locked up. But you got a lot of borderline players who got to play and show what they can do.
Let's take a look at some of the highs and some of the lows of what have transpired in the 2016 preseason for the Saints thus far. First of all, you got to talk about rookies. Michael Thomas, well, he looks like the real deal. 6 catches so far, in a limited role, I might add. Tommy Lee Lewis, the Bill Parcells find. I think he's going to make the roster. Von Bell, the second-round draft pick from Ohio State, leads the team in tackles. Looks like a player. And then, of course, you got lows. Sheldon Rankins, number 1 pick. He's out until October with the broken bone in his leg. And then the turnovers have been unbelievably disconcerting. 9 turnovers in 3 games and a -6 turnover margin, which is the worst in the NFL. And I don't care if you're playing preseason games, scrimmages, practice, whatever it is, when you're turning the ball over, you're not a good team and you don't have much of a chance, Ricky.
Can you look at this team and, a lot of bad breaks, just like Hightower fumbling the ball up, the guy hit him from behind, So a couple of them been bad breaks that the guy just didn't see them. But like you said, just turning the ball over in itself, that can't happen if you don't have the best team, so you definitely can't turn the ball over.
All right, so let's talk about the biggest area of concern or areas of concern right now. Brian, you have to start with the offensive line. It's the elephant in the room. It's all everyone wants to talk about, but it's legitimate. But you knew what you had coming in. You've had Tim Lolito for 3 years. You've had Senio Kelemete now for 2 years. And you got to look at Andrew Speed last year, and it didn't look very good. You thought he'd be better. Where does he really play? You got Zach Strief, who's getting a little bit older. So you got Armstead and Unger and maybe Strief. That's not enough.
And you hope that Armstead is healthy, Kenny.
Correct.
He's got some issues that we're not really certain what the injury is, but you're absolutely right. And I feel this way. I still think Jari Evans, in a declining Jari Evans, is better than any of the guards they have on their roster right now. And I think that has come back to at least put the focus on that position. They are not where they need to be to play and win in the regular season.
And they can't afford for Pete to be a bust,
No.
to be a miss. I mean, if he's a bust, they lose.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's that simple.
Number one pick, he's got to produce. Kenny, I'm not so sure if they think he's on the right side anymore. Sean Payton was talking earlier today. He might move to the left side, so that's not good for a young player. He needs to get into a position. Ricky, you know this.
But he's not strong enough. You know what I mean? You know, a guy like that, you know, you get a physical guy who can rush the pass. They would love to meet a guy like that who's just not strong enough. And that's his whole problem. He got to get in that weight room and get a lot stronger.
Well, beyond the offensive line, Ricky, I'll ask you this question. If there's any other significant concern going into the regular season where the Saints are concerned, what might that position or that concern be?
Well, the running backs, and the tight ends. So, you know, the Saints got some holes that they got to fill. You got a great quarterback, but you got to give him time with that offensive line. And I see where team coming up front, they put the 8-man in the box and they go after Drew Brees, make him get rid of the ball quick. And they're showing that they can't block everybody. So as long as you have that problem, you're going to have a lot of problems. Then you got a great quarterback who, he getting up in age too. So, he can't run and duck to people like some of the young quarterbacks. So they're going to have a little problem.
You have to be a little bit concerned about Keenan Lewis being gone. And you can understand it. If he's not healthy and can't play, then he can't help you at this age. But you look at now what they're playing with. There's a bunch of young guys. And it looks like Damian Swann has regressed. They picked up Cortland Finnegan. They got a bunch of free agent types otherwise, opposite Delvin Breaux. Is that enough?
No, not the secondary, because I was looking at the game, and just seeing that these guys got the hold, the guy running the route, and they think the guy going to catch the ball, so they just grab and hold. And, that's just inexperience, and they're going to have to get better with that, As they play a while, they'll get better with it.
And otherwise, Brian, if you're looking at another area to point the finger at, there's two. Number one, depth at wide receiver. I see 3 NFL players, not counting a Tommy Lee Lewis or a Brandon Coleman, who I've never been sold on. And then I look at the kicking position and try to, again, they're in the same spot. If you got 2, you got none, right? Do they have a kicker? I mean, they went in last year, they made the decision, turned out to be the wrong guy, had to again make a decision to change that in season. They've gone through 9 kickers under Coach Payton, and here we are again faced with a decision to make there.
I couldn't agree with you anymore, Kenny. From a wide receiver standpoint, I'm still not sold on. I still think, Michael Thomas looks like he's a deep threat, okay, and he's going to give him that vertical threat. Kobe Fleener, I'm not sold on Kobe Fleener yet. But, Kenny, the one thing that we really haven't discussed, in my opinion, is a concern, is the pass rush or lack of pass rush. I know Sheldon Rankins was brought in to bring that interior push. He's hurt. He's going to miss much of September into October. They've got to get a pass rush because that will help those young DBs. Actually, I'm kind of happy about their young secondary. I really am. I think there's a lot of potential there. Potential means, like Jim Moore said,
Yeah.
Kenny, you haven't done it yet, and they haven't done it.
Right.
But I like the way they're going there.
Well, Jim Moore also said, you don't know what a pass rush is, and you never will.
You're right about that.
And he had Ricky Jackson and Pat Swilling for crying out loud. Now, one of the other concerns about the Saints, very obviously, is even if they're better, and that's debatable, the schedule is much more difficult this year. The numbers belie that. When you look at the toughest schedules in the NFL based on last year's records, the New Orleans Saints have the 4th toughest schedule in the NFL. And that is an ominous thing to think about. When they come back from that bye, they've got murderer's row. That's why I believe the Saints have to be 3-1 going into that bye, because when they come back from that, they've got an incredibly difficult schedule, Ricky.
Okay, but looking at that schedule, all the teams on that board there, the Saints play every one of those teams, so that's going to help there a little bit, but they got a tough schedule. And just looking at their schedule, they need a little more firepower, Brian, to take on the schedule.
One of the things, Brian, that we've seen that I hadn't seen Sean Payton do before is calling players out.
Yes.
He's done that this entire preseason by name.
Yeah, he has. And, Garrett Grayson, of course, the quarterback, he called him out. And really offensive line, too. Sean said it absolutely perfectly after the loss to Pittsburgh. They haven't done a great job protecting, and they haven't put a pass rush. And if you can't do those things, the Saints play against, from last year's numbers, the number of quarterbacks that they play are the highest rated quarterbacks in the league. They will be facing the quarterbacks from last year that put up the biggest ratings. So that put a lot of pressure on a young, improved defense.
sportsNOLAtv this season is once again presented by our good and great friends at Premier Automotive. And Troy Duhan at Premier Automotive Group. The Premier Automotive family has built its business on expansive inventory, affordable deals, and premier customer service. Premier continues to be more than giving fabulous deals on cars. They are giving hope and giving back to the local community and changing lives every day around the world. When you purchase a vehicle from any Premier Automotive dealership, you are joining their mission and being part of the many missions Premier gives hope to. To find a dealership near you and to learn more about what Premier is doing in the community, visit premierautomotive.com. Back to take a trip around the NFL when sportsNOLAtv continues.